Max Gorlin, Melbourne Football Club. You're listening to the Coaches Panel.
This is Nat Fyfe from the Fremantle Footy Club.
Trent Cotchin from the Richmond Footy Club.
Scott Pendlebury from the Collingwood Football Club. You're listening to the Coaches Panel.
Patrick Cooch from the Carlton Footy Club.
It's Rory Sloane here from the Adelaide Crows.
This is Tom Mitchell from the Hawthorn Footy Club, and you're listening to the Coaches Panel.
Hey friends, it's MJ from the Coaches Panel. I hope you're well and welcome to another episode of the 50 Most Relevant. Getting real close now, entering the 30s. Today, we're looking at the player I've got at number 41, Collingwood defender Jack Crisp. Right throughout these 50 Most Relevance, by the way, these episodes, always love to get some of the great fantasy football minds from across the community. It is an incredible, sharing and gracious community. And a guest we've had for the past 2 or 3 seasons now. It's good to have him back on again. The Statesman from the Draft Doctors. Hello, mate. How are you?
I'm very well, MJ. A beautiful, nice, warm summer's day in Darwin, as they all seem to be honest.
I don't think there's anything but a summer's day in Darwin. 365 days of the year. Make sure you check out the Draft Doctors podcast, the website, in a couple of weeks' time. 2 great pieces of content I'm sure will be coming from the guys. Their annual draft rankings are going to be heading your way. There's an incredible amount of work that's getting done behind the scenes. You don't want to miss what they've been doing with that. Also, the mock draft simulator is a regular feature of what the Draft Doctors are always doing. You don't want to miss out on that. And a bunch of other stuff. I'll tell you a little about it later, but their draft kit is elite. If you play in any of the drafting formats, you want to get onto that. The Draft Doctors, some good friends of the Coaches Panel and many in the fantasy footy community. All right, let's talk about Jack Crisp, 27 years old, defender at Collingwood. And despite having some moments during the 2020 season that left coaches a little bit in pain, overall, still a really strong year. His best SuperCoach score from the year came against the Gold Coast Suns. It was a 138, while in AFLFantasy and DreamTeam, it was a 121 against Brisbane. That's not an adjusted score. That's what he actually delivered. In terms of his career best, both of them came in 2018 across the formats. It was a 147 against the Cats and a 153 in SuperCoach against the Tigers. Based on what he did do last year, he is going to be priced at an average of 99.2 in SuperCoach. That leaves him priced at just over 530K. While in Dream Team and AFL Fantasy, he delivered a 76.1, or if you want to know what that is, based on the adjusted average, it's just on 95. In Fantasy, he is going to set you back just over 720K, while it's just a touch over 702,000 in Dream Team. And Statesman, there was periods of the year where, depending on when you owned him, you either loved him or loathed him. But as a whole, it was a pretty strong season across all the formats yet again for Jack Crisp.
Absolutely. On the averages, it was his second best year in AFL Fantasy and his best ever season in SuperCoach, which is quite remarkable when you think about it. And I think the fault of us all as fantasy coaches is we get a little bit recency biased. And we get very opinionated on players when they do poorly when we own them. Now, if we own them and they do poorly, there's a line that goes through them. The never again list is used quite regularly. But on the other hand, if you don't own them, you see a couple of poor scores and you actually buy cheap and they come good, which he did this year. His last part of the season, last 6 or 7 games, was quite incredible. Then we absolutely love them. So that's what really happens. But the bottom line is the changes at this club are only going to assist 2 people, and that's Taylor Adams and Jack Crisp. There is no doubts about that. The other thing I like about this player is we're talking 6 seasons at Collingwood, and he has not missed a game. Now, when you're setting up who's going to be the last 22 players you want, now this year he was the 6th highest averaging defender, but that is behind Alex Witherden, who only played 5 games.
Handful of games, yeah.
And Jeremy Howe, who only played 4 games. So he ended up actually being the 3rd highest scoring defender. Now, to me, that is the type of bloke you want to finish with in your team. He's dependable. He's always there. He can go massive, which is the data you just shared with us. And he is always around that mark of being in the top 6. This is just an incredible player, very underrated, probably because of his early Brisbane days where he couldn't always get a game. But his last 6 seasons, an average of 91, 84, 88, 87, 97, and now 95. This is a dead set top 6 defender.
He just finds a way every single year, regardless of the format you choose to play, where he just gets that scoring role. And just as you mentioned, never misses a footy game. That back end of the year in Dream Team and AFL Fantasy, in the final 5 games in the year of all defenders, only Jake Lloyd was averaging more than him. So you think about Luke McDonald, who we spoke about a few days ago on the 50 most relevant, people raving about that hot run to the end of the year in that format. Well, Chris was going even better in terms of his seasonal average, very, very similar in SuperCoach, where he even outscored Luke McDonald in a number of these formats, even back in 2019. Again, averaged 97.7 in AFL Fantasy, and from round 5 to round 20 in that format, he only had one score below 84, 12 tons, while in SuperCoach, maybe a little bit down last year compared to his personal best of this season that's just gone, but he's still ranked inside the top 10 for defenders for total points scored and had a bunch of other tons. You rattled off those AFL fantasy averages. SuperCoach, it's a little lower, but it's still very, very strong. 89, 85, 82, 95, 88, 99 of those seasonal averages in those formats as well since getting to Collingwood. And he has all those things that you love about a defender, whether it be in a draft or a salary cap, doesn't he, Statesman? He's got a really nice scoring ceiling.
Yeah.
His basement is really, really high. And as you mentioned, the kid just doesn't miss a game.
Oh, absolutely. And the choice of how many of these top 6 defenders you actually start with actually should be determined on the availability of the amount of rookies that are available in each line, but also the fact, the balance of your squad. Now, there's no reason why you can't have 2 of Lloyd, Whitfield, Laird and Crisp. Now, you might consider Stewart to be considered in that group, but so they would be the 5 that I'll be pretty solid that they're going to be in the top 6 all round that mark. Now, if you're $150,000 short of having both Lloyd and Whitfield, then having someone like a Crisp is not a bad decision because he's going to end up on your list. And because he is cheaper, and you would know the actual price quicker than I would. But he is less likely to drop in funds than a Jake Lloyd if a Jake Lloyd gets tagged in the first 2 or 3 rounds, which is quite achievable to actually happen.
Well, yeah, and then you contrast that to, say, let's pick a Rory Laird. Now, I think he's going to play through that midfield role, but should he not, there might be a little bit of a scoring regression if he returns back to halfback. Lachie Whitfield has shown numerous times that he's had a few injuring moments in games. They're all not related to one specific thing. It's also been shown he's a tag target. Again, I'm sure we'll talk about those players later in the 50 most relevant, but if you want to create a storyline for why you want to go and pick up Jack Crisp, that durability, that ceiling, that consistency, the fact that he's going to be there and thereabouts in that top 6 to top 10 defenders. And then you throw in that low ownership component too. And while you never want to pick someone just because they're unique, that little bit of extra cash save, that little bit of safety and durability, that ceiling that can match, and all of a sudden you've got a reason for why Crispy's your boy.
Absolutely. And if he starts the season like he finished last season, being the second highest average defender in the last 6 weeks, if he was to start the season like that, then all of a sudden you've got one of the differences that are actually going to put you at top of the leaderboard nice and early in the season. And that's one of the key elements of having a successful year, is actually starting really well with making smart and here really wise decision, because you've got a durable person that's going to end up being in your team. It's another trade you're not wasting, because if you fill it full of mid prices and only one of them comes off, all of a sudden you've got 5 trades on the field. Here you've got someone that you can actually put in there. Yes, might have a few down weeks here and there depending on role, but the likelihood is going to be in the top 6. He's a set and forget and a set and forget at the right price, not at the top price.
Yeah, it's true. Right at the top of the episode, you said something really intrigued me. You said there were two players that were going to benefit with the departure of Adam Treloar. Taylor Adams, we'll talk about him maybe a little bit later on in the 50 most relevant, maybe not. What's your take on how you think the absence of Treloar is going to have a beneficial impact on Jack Crisp?
Well, actually, I just talked about the list changes. So right. I think the biggest issue with Collingwood has been the amount of opportunities they've had in the defensive line. So Langdon, Scharenberg as well. And then you add in Treloar, which had an overbalance with the midfield. So we've seen Taylor Adams play a season at halfback. We've seen them flirt with Pendlebury there. All of a sudden, there's a sort of a clearing of the decks at Collingwood. And people can complain about their trade period, but at the end of the day, for us fantasy players, it's been really beneficial. It's the exact opposite to what Bulldogs have gone and done with us, where we're panicking who we're going to pick there because we don't know who's going to get the right time. Where I think part of what's happened to Collingwood when they've had a few injuries is Crisp has found himself in the midfield rotations. All of a sudden, they've got this younger group coming through. He will spend most of his time on that half-back line, but when they need a burst of pace or a bit of something different, then he'll get some midfield time where you haven't got Treloar that you need to manage through there. And, of course, Adams gets the big tick in the box now because his kryptonite was Treloar.
Yeah.
And what Treloar leaving and Pendlebury ageing creates is an opportunity for Crisp to get a bit more midfield time. So you'll actually just see him get a little bit of a burst here and there. Don't expect him to be a full-time midfielder. His role in their chipping game actually suits him to get a really good scoring back defender anyway. So the benefit of getting a bit of extra midfield time only just lifts his ceiling a bit.
Yeah, nice work. I think if you're not going to choose to start Crispy, he definitely needs to be on your upgrade target at some point during the year. Does have that round 14 multi-buy round, which also has a number of big name defenders that we look at, probably Laird, Lloyd, and Luke Ryan. They're probably the three, but definitely if you're not going to start Crisp, that's okay. He needs to be on that upgrade target watch list right throughout the season. At the end of every single one of these episodes, we always get our guests to give us their take on where we're going to draft these guys. The good thing is that's kind of your specialty, given the work you do with the draft doctors. Like I said about the draft rankings, it's ranking season in your podcasts at the moment. You can go and check them out through Spotify and iTunes, some great friends of the panel. Where are you both ranking him in a tier, but also in terms of rounds, where should we be going to get Jack Crisp?
So I've got him at tier 2. So I've only got 3 players in tier 1, and that's Lloyd, Whitfield and Laird. Now, Laird, I almost put in a tier 1.5 because it's really depending on role. Whitfield can score no matter where he is. We know Jake Lloyd's role is not going to change, but Laird could be a halfback. If they want to go the kids and Haitley and Sloan back to have that midfield up and running. I know there's a spot available for Crouch, but Sloan was effectively missing for the whole year, and Haitley comes in. So Laird, I'm a little bit worried about what it's going to be, but I think the points difference is only 8 to 10 if he's a full-time midfielder versus that sweeping +6 defender. Yeah. So I sort of have him in that third position. Jack's next for me. So and he's right at the top end of tier 2, and him and Stewart I sort of have in that sort of same category. I want to see more of Maynard. I want to see more of Mills, and I want to see more of Short because we've only seen a little bit of him. And they're the type that are around that tier 2. Jack sits right on the top of that. So I'll be quite comfortable because you'll see Lloyd and Whitfield go in round 1 without a shadow of a doubt. I think you'll see Laird go early round 2. So I think Crisp is a late round 2, round 3, or if you get on a gold mine, you might get him in round 4. And if he's available in round 4, I'll be jumping all over him. Yeah,
absolutely. You should be. The Statesman from the Draft Doctors, mate, appreciate your thoughts today on Jack Crisp.
Absolute pleasure.
My pleasure to have you on. Of course, if you want to check out his work and the rest of the guys from the Draft Doctors, you can go and check them out. They've got a heap of podcasts dropping at the moment. They've got the website, and in the next few weeks, 2 great pieces of content for draft players. They've got the draft kit and the mock draft simulator. They're going to be back for 2021. Tomorrow, we get to the number 40 of the 50 most relevant. If you want to go and see any of the players, whether it be Crispy today or any of the other players revealed, you can go and check that out at coachespanel.tv. Tomorrow, we end the 40s of the 50. Who's it going to be? You have to find out in 24 hours.